series called Frequency, Tune In, Hear God. So that's what we're talking about, that God is speaking and we can tune into the right frequency. 1 Samuel 3 verse 1 says, Now the boy Samuel ministered to the Lord before Eli. This is when God called him, remember, and he spoke to him. Watch this verse though. And the word of the Lord was rare in those days. The word of the Lord was rare in those days. Now, we think of the word rare as in limited supply, and that's one of the definitions. But in the Hebrew here, that's not the definition or the primary definition of this word. The primary definition from the Hebrew word here is valuable. The word of the Lord was precious and was valuable, and it was rare. God wasn't speaking much during that time, but it was valuable. The title of the message today is Value His Voice. Now, we want to hear God, but this is going to be the most practical in the series so far. But you have to understand, if you want to hear God, you're going to have to set a value on hearing God. You're going to have to value His voice. So let me give you some practical ways to hear God, all right? Here's number one, set an appointment. Set an appointment. Now, in Exodus chapter 19, we're asked you to turn, look at verses 10 and 11. Then the Lord said to Moses, Go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes, and let them be ready for the third day. For on the third day the Lord will come down upon Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. And then if you look down at verse 19, it says, And when the blast of the trumpet sounded long and became louder and louder, Moses spoke, watch, and God answered him by voice. So God spoke. Moses spoke, God spoke to him and spoke to the people. But here's what you need to know. God set an appointment. He said, have the people get ready today and tomorrow, and on the third day, I'll speak. So God set an appointment. I know this is practical, but a misappointment becomes a disappointment. And if you don't set an appointment, you will miss it. Here's what's amazing. We set appointments to meet with people we don't even like. But we don't set an appointment to meet with the most important person there is. When our church was smaller, there was a man in the church that sold his company. He was going to give a tithe, a very large gift to the church. And he needed, at that time, I did a lot of the signing at the bank. I don't do that anymore, but the church was so small. And so he called and said, hey, there'll be some documents to sign for me to transfer these funds. Can you meet me in the morning? And I said, no, I have an appointment with the Lord. I meet with the Lord every morning. And I remember when we went to the bank then, we met in the afternoon. He said, I heard you talk about meeting with God, but I didn't think you would. I just didn't understand how important it was to you until. Be still and worship. Psalm 46 verse 10, be still and know that I am God. Exodus 14 verse 13, and Moses said to the people, do not be afraid, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. This is before they crossed the Red Sea. 2 Chronicles 20 verse 17, you will not need to fight in this battle. I want you to just look at that for a moment. Would you receive that word if you're in a battle? It's a pretty good word from God, isn't it? You will not need to fight in this battle. Position yourselves, stand still, and see the salvation of the Lord. This is the hardest thing for people to do to hear God, is to be still and worship. In 2 Chronicles 20, when God said stand still, he instructed them to send the singers out first in the battle. So not the warriors, they sent a worship team out in front. The worship team started worshiping, and the three armies that had encamped against Israel turned and killed each other. And the warriors never even had to fight. because God showed up and did it. Would that be all right? Whatever battle you're in? Okay, but here's the problem. We're going to talk about praying and reading the Word. That's important. But most people go straight to prayer and reading the Word. The most important thing you can do if you're going to ever hear God or meet with God is to be still in worship. It's before you pray and read the Word. It's before God speaks. Yesterday, I was telling some of the guys backstage, I haven't told you this, but I've been having severe back problems since July last year. Severe. I've had procedures, injections. I've gone to doctor after doctor. I've gone to a shoulder doctor because I fell years ago, and hurt my shoulder. I thought, well, maybe that's what's doing it. I left the shoulder doctor this last Tuesday thinking, well, that's probably what's causing it. And he said it's not what's causing it. It has felt like a knife between my shoulder blades. I'm talking about constantly. And so when I left the doctor Tuesday, I thought to myself, my only hope is God. My only hope is God. And this Friday, I was getting ready I was going to go speak at Pink Friday night, but I remember thinking, I think I have time for an extended quiet time today. Not just a quiet time, but an extended quiet time. And so I wasn't thinking about my back, I was just thinking about meeting with God. And I just got into the presence of God. And during worship, I did like I've done many times. On some of the songs, I sang my own words. I don't know if you've ever done that. But I was singing the melody and the tune, and maybe the pitch, I don't know, but it was close, best I could do. But I just began to cry out to God. But I began to cry out about some things that I've been dealing with. Some areas of weakness in my life. And repenting, places where I've blown it and I've messed up, and just crying out to God. And then I began to just cry out to God to heal my back, because I said, God, you're it. You're the only, I can't do it without you. I'm telling you, God healed my back yesterday morning. In my quiet time. And I know, when you've had a knife in your back for 8 or 9 months, But it happened because of God. But I was meeting with God. I want everyone here to have an intimate relationship with Jesus. And this is part of it. I know it sounds very practical, but set an appointment, be still, and worship. Here's number 3, pray and read. Pray and read the Bible. Mark 1, verse 35, in the morning, having risen a long while before daylight, he, that's Jesus, went out and departed to a solitary place. Notice a time and a place, in the morning and a place. And there he prayed. Psalm 119, verse 147, this is David speaking, I rise before the dawning of the morning and cry for help. That's what I felt like I did yesterday. I hope in your word. So cry for help is prayer. Hope in your word is read the word. So I'm going to do something that's kind of strange. I'm going to tell you for what to pray and where to read. Okay, I said pray and read. I'm going to tell you how to pray. I'm going to tell you what to pray for, and I'm going to tell you where to read in the Bible. All right? So first of all, what you should pray for, whatever's on your heart. You can't imagine how much this will help you. If your family's on your heart, pray. Because if you don't, you're not going to be able to go on. You're not going to be able to hear God because you have something on your heart that's burdening you. If your finances are on your heart, pray. If your health is on your heart, pray. Meet with God, but then when it comes time to pray, pray about what you want to pray about, all right? And then read the Word. Now, before I tell you where to read, get a version that's easy to understand for your quiet time, all right? I could go into all the different types of versions there are, but something like an NIV or something that it's called a dynamic translation. It's a thought for thought rather than a word for word translation. But I can tell you a version I've been reading in my quiet time for over a year now, The Message. I just like it. And I actually, when I'm reading it, I think to myself, I've read this somewhere before, but it sounds different. I mean, it's it's just really a great version of the Bible. But read something that's easy to understand. Now, when you study, yes, go back to an exact equivalency translation. But when you're just reading, find something that's easy to read. Okay, but you say, people have asked me this, Pastor, where do I read in the Bible? Okay, I'm going to tell you where. Everyone ready? On the inside. I've read the outside before, and I've even got it memorized. Holy Bible. Anywhere on the inside. Anywhere. Read a proverb, a chapter in Proverbs a day. Read a chapter in the Old Testament, a chapter in the New Testament a day. But just read God's Word somewhere. All right, and here's number 4, listen and write. Listen and write. Now, set an appointment, be still and worship, pray and read, but listen and write. This is the most practical way I know to hear God. Is to quiet yourself after you've worshiped, prayed, and read, and then write. Psalm 45, verse 1, my heart burst its banks, spilling beauty and goodness. I pour it out in a poem to the King, shaping the river into words. That's David. We have some of the poems that he wrote. 1 Chronicles 28:19. All this, said David, talking about the tabernacle, the Lord made me understand in writing. When I wrote it, I understood it. By his hand upon me, all the works of these plans. And Habakkuk 2:2, then the Lord answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain on tablets, that he may run who reads it. This is the best way I know to hear God. This is the most practical way to hear God. Write your prayers. Write what you believe God is saying to you through that passage of Scripture. Write it. When you are praying about something, after you've prayed, you've read, write it. Here's what will happen. You will move from writing in the third person to writing in the first person. In other words, you'll say, write this, like, I believe God is speaking to me through this passage that I should trust him. I believe God is saying that I can hope in him, that he is faithful, that he is merciful, that he is loving, that he is kind, that he is gracious. Pretty soon you'll begin to write, I believe the Lord is saying to me, I am faithful. I am gracious. You can trust me. You can put your confidence in me. You'll begin writing in the first person, and you'll understand this is God speaking to me. God is speaking to me. I told you a few weeks ago, my best memories after 35 years of being a Christian are not what God has done for me, even though obviously I'm grateful for salvation and all that God has given as far as a family and things like that, but it's what he's spoken to me. When I go back and think about my journey as a believer, I can go back to when God spoke. And when God said something to me, that is my desire for every person, no matter what your business is, no matter what your vocation is. In this series, I am crying out to God, God, would you put a hunger in every person that attends Gateway Church to hear you, to hear your voice. This is one of the greatest joys of the Christian walk, is to have a personal relationship with God, to hear God. So I want you more than anything else to hear God. I want you to have an intimate relationship with the one who loves you. And I want you to learn to hear his voice. And you can. You can. You know, a few years ago, I had a dream. And I had a dream about a pastor friend of mine, and the dream was very encouraging. And all morning as I walked and prayed, I kept thinking about him and praying for him and praying that God would encourage him and comfort him on that day. And a few weeks later, I thought, I need to call him and encourage him. And so I called him and I said, I want to tell you about this dream that I had. And it so encouraged him. And then I said to him, what's going on in your life? And he said, well, I don't know if you heard, but a few weeks ago, my father passed away.
And I said, I'm so sorry, I didn't know that. And we talked for a while, and then I started thinking about the dream and about the morning that I prayed for him. And I said to him, hey, did your father pass away on this date early in the morning? And he said, yeah, that's the exact date that my father passed away. And I said to him, that's the day that I had the dream. That's the day that as I walked that morning and as I prayed that God would encourage you that day and that God would comfort you. And I'll never forget how he said to me, Robert, you can't imagine how encouraging that is to me, that on the day that my father passed away, God gave you a dream. God spoke to your heart, and you prayed for me that day, and you prayed for strength, and you prayed for encouragement. I want to encourage you to value God's voice, to set a time and a place to meet with God, to spend time with God. I have another pastor friend of mine that shared this with his congregation, and there was a man that said to him, you know, I don't know if I even have time to do something like that. And my pastor friend said to him, you know, we're all busy, but when we value something, we make time for it. And so this man took time. He said, I bought a rocking chair, and I would sit in that rocking chair every morning, and I would read